Imagine it's just a normal night. You're walking through the streets, maybe heading into a cafe, grabbing your coffee. Everything feels ordinary. But what you don't realize is that this simple drink, that simple meal on your plate, could be a doorway. A doorway to something you'll never come back from. Because on the other side, people were turned into lab rats in a nightmare called Project MKUltra. This was a secret CIA project. The goal? Mind control. They wanted to know if it was possible to make someone lose their will entirely, to follow orders like a puppet. And to find out, they ran experiments. Not on volunteers, not on criminals. On ordinary people. One of the darkest chapters was something called Operation Midnight Climax. The name might sound funny, but behind it was pure terror. The CIA rented out apartments in cities like San Francisco and New York. From the outside, they looked like normal houses. Inside, they placed women who worked secretly with the CIA. These women lured men in. The men thought it was just another wild night. What they didn't know was that behind a one-way mirror, CIA agents were watching, recording, writing down everything. Here's where it gets disturbing. The drinks, the cigarettes, even the food, were laced with LSD and other drugs. The men had no idea. Suddenly, their laughter would turn strange, their eyes would go blank, and they'd start rambling, hallucinating. Meanwhile, the agents behind the glass took notes: who panics, who gets violent, who breaks down in tears. To the men, it felt like a night of pleasure. In reality, they were test subjects. And it didn't stop in those apartments. Some declassified documents show that the CIA tested these drugs in public spaces too. Meaning what? It means maybe that coffee you bought at a cafe, that burger you ate at a diner, could have been dosed, without you ever knowing. Imagine realizing that at some point in your life, you may have been watched from afar, studied like an insect, without your consent. One of the most famous victims was Frank Olson, a scientist who actually worked on the project. At some point, he either learned too much or couldn't handle what was happening. Days later, he fell, or was pushed, out of a hotel window. Officially, it was called suicide. But years later, evidence suggested he may have been silenced. If someone inside the system wasn't safe, what about the rest? But Frank wasn't the only one. Countless others were left shattered. Some lost their memories forever, others developed severe psychosis, paranoia, or hallucinations that never went away. Many ended up taking their own lives. The scariest part? We'll never know the real number of victims. Because when the project was exposed, the CIA destroyed most of the files. What we know now is only a fraction of the truth. The methods were brutal: days without sleep, total sensory deprivation in pitch-black rooms, massive electroshocks, deep hypnosis, and endless drug combinations. The goal wasn't to heal, it was to break the human mind and see how far it could be pushed. And it worked. People walked out of those rooms as shells of who they once were. Here's the most terrifying thought: what if you, right now, unknowingly, have been part of this too? What if, years ago, that drink, that meal, that pill wasn't what you thought it was? What if someone was watching you from a distance, scribbling notes as you laughed, cried, or broke apart? Because once a weapon like this exists, who's to say it was ever truly buried? Who's to say it isn't still happening somewhere, right now? So next time you take a sip of your coffee, ask yourself, what if this is part of an experiment, and I'll never even know?